the documentary. You can see displayed here on the screen, sort of the title screen there. They volunteered for this. Merrill's Marauders. We've got 3 of the actual Merrill Marauder team here with us this morning that I'd like to recognize before we get started. One of those is Mr. Gilbert Gil Howland. He's currently 98 years old. He's sitting right in the middle of the pack over here. So we'd just like to welcome him. The next of the original Marauders that we have here with us this morning, sitting at the table right next to him, Mr. Gabe Kenny, one of the original. And he is 101. And then our third Marauder here this morning with us, who is a very young 98 years old. Mr. Bob Passanisi is sitting at the table right here. Now, not only are we honored by their presence this morning with us and last night, but we're also honored to have their family. So thank you very much, family members, for joining them and being part of our celebration this morning. Last night, there were also family members from 25 of the other original Marauders who were either unable to be here or who have passed on. So it is truly a great weekend to recognize the service and the accomplishments of the Merrill's Marauders, culminated by our discussion this morning with the 3 Marauders that we had eating breakfast with us this morning. For the collective, I'll just take a second and introduce myself. I'm the professor of military science here at the University of North Georgia. I've also got Colonel Joe Matthews, who's the commandant of the Corps of Cadets. So all of the college students that you see around you right now, with very few exceptions, are part of the Corps of Cadets and will graduate from the University of North Georgia and commission as a second lieutenant in the United States Army, either active duty, guard, or reserve. On average, over the last few years and in the years that we project in the future, we're looking at about 100 new second lieutenants each year produced by this senior military college, the University of North Georgia, one of only 6 in the nation. So we have a proud lineage in the Boar's Head Brigade, and that's represented for family members sitting right here with you and around you at the tables. So we are extremely excited to have the opportunity to benefit from asking the Marauders just a few questions. Now, the questions that are going to be asked this morning were generated by the team right here around you. So the Marauders have a list of these questions that are available at their tables, and they've got microphones as well. So I'm going to let them go first. We'll start over with Mr. Howland and see at his table if perhaps there's a question that he would like to have a shot at answering. And if not, I'm glad to put some up on the screen.
He's right.
Okay, what number is it?
1.
All right, so is Cadet Davis in the room this morning? Cadet Davis? Where you at? All right, so this is Cadet Davis's question. I'll read it out since I've got a microphone. And the question is, do you think that modern day training would be enough to prepare you for the missions that you executed during World War II?
Modern day training has to be improved to prepare for the mission. World War II.
So what's your answer? What's your answer? What's that? You disagree.
One-day training,
Why isn't it enough?
I'm sorry.
Why isn't it enough?
I'm gonna swim underwater.
He's,
Right.
Brian, he served in World War II, Korea, and did 2 combat tours
No,
in Vietnam.
clothes, every single, make a little raft. Put all your clothes in the raft, and they swim across the bay. It was like 8 feet deep. And that was good. We over there, guy going down the trail, we run into a bunch of bamboos, screaming. Somebody had shot one of them. It was bad on the ground, there was about 30 in the trees. And I'm all by myself. I'm down this trail. And it told us, you never work alone, you always work together. 2 buddies, take care of each other. That's the main thing.
We're stopping.
For those who couldn't hear the last part there, he said you take care of each other. Right? You take care of each other.
I heard waterborne operation, reservoir.
That's right. You take care of each other, and he also highlighted some of the experiences he had in the jungle with water crossings, swimming, right? So the cadets here can tell you one of the things that we've changed this year is our combat water survival or skills training to make sure that we're addressing the opportunity to train in case they encounter water in the future. Mr. Duke just highlighted for our guests, we do training in some Zodiac rubber boats, much like the ones that Mr. Howland was mentioned. We're probably not as proficient in them as he was, since you had to use them so frequently. But that's right. Great feedback, and I'll end again with what he said, you take care of each other. And that's a message that we have here very, very often. So, all right, Mr. Kinney, is there a question in there that you'd like? Number 4? Is this the right one? All right, is Cadet Halal here? Halal. Thank you. Stand up, stand up. All right. What was the drive? What was the drive that motivated you to keep marching through the jungle?
First, I was when mission to stop the Japanese advancing on them. Advancing into India. And when it stopped, brought the crowd of China was not being served. Could not get supplies to China, through the last route. And the drive was the Marauder road where we could get to there. And once we got started into the drive, we got into action. The motivation was you just had to take the group that was there, which we would be in a small group mostly, and up there. And you had to protect yourself and then the group that was, rest of you that was there in that bar. Once you're in there, you had to keep moving. There was no other place to go. It had to go forward. There was no going back. So the motivation is you just had to move forward, not back.
All right, thank you. I'm not sure sure if it's appropriate to yell amen while you're saying that, but I like that. Sometimes you just have to move forward. It's the only way to go. One foot in front of each other, and you do it while taking care of each other. All right, let me see if Mr. Bob Passanisi has one of the ones that he'd like to answer. Sir, what number is on that? Number 2? Is this the right question? Okay, is Cadet Presley in here this morning? All right.
Probably.
So the question is, what is the most valuable leadership lesson that you learned during your time as a Marauder?
Probably the most important thing you learn as a Marauder is that you can endure what you never believed was possible. All you have to do is continue on. Make as much headway as you can. The human body is much stronger than you can possibly imagine. You got guts you never used.
All right. Are there any other questions that our Marauders would like to answer, or that you would like to ask of us? Your choice.
14.
14? All right, is Cadet Jordan Ryan here this morning? All right, Cadet Ryan, this is your question for Mr. Kenny. What was the most essential equipment item in your opinion? And did you make alterations to the gear that you were issued?
That's the most important.
The equipment we had was minor. Mine was a rounding automatic rifle, 20-shot, clip, fast fire. 600 rounds a minute is supposed to. Could not be a fire gun. So the rifle could not be, there's no way you can shoot all of the other shot at it. You just had to use it as it was and make sure you kept it in shape. For me, myself, I carried the extra bolt. Fire pin, I just sent an extra bolt in, and we're ready to fire again. That was the only alternation we did, and if you call it an alternation, it was not, it was just replacing a part. And that only part that could be replaced was the bolt. And I did carry a spare. And put it around. Ammunition was the main thing. To me, I carried ammunition. In any truck, we could prescribe with ammunition. I would try to load and carry 1,000 rounds of ammunition, which is what a load in ammunition. Our equipment, compared to what these gentlemen are using now, we cannot even imagine what it would be like, or I cannot imagine what it would be like. Amen. Thank you.
All right, so for all my warriors in this room, he didn't talk about his sleeping bag, he didn't talk about his vest kit, he didn't talk about his poncho liner, or his poncho. Spoken like a true infantryman, he said the only piece of equipment that mattered was his rifle. And he kept it in tip-top shape, carried a spare bolt and lots of ammunition. So keep that in mind as we get ready to head out to the field here next month for a field training exercise. No ponchos. All right, is there another question from one of the Marauders that they might like to address, or that you might like to ask us?
You have another question?
Number 3. fast and easy. Is Cadet Belly here? Belli. Cadet Belli. Thank you. All right, the question is, do you remember your first mission? And what was it like operating for the first time in Merrill?
Our first mission was Waterborne. I was in the 1st Battalion. The 1st Battalion was mostly Green troops that came from the States. The other 2 battalions had more experienced personnel and were better organized for combat. We were at the river bank where the Japanese were trying to cross. And I am a radio repairman, so I've got an SCR 300 radio I'm working on, and I've got earphones on. I look around, I see everybody scurrying. I take my earphones off, and nothing's happening. What actually was happening was incoming, and I couldn't hear it because of the earphones. I realized then and there that you could get killed there. And that was my baptism of a fire.
All right, so all you signal officers, you better keep that in mind. We got your, we don't have headphones as much, but we definitely got earbuds and earphones and all that. So there's just some sage advice. You can't hear the incoming if you got those on. Well said, sir. Now, you mentioned the radio. I'm curious if the Marauders would tell how important was that radio in your daily operations? How important was the radio?
We had a couple of different radios. The most important one was an ANPRC. That was designed especially for us. That's serial number 1 through 12. It was a CW radio and powered by a hand crank generator. Only 25 watts, but boy, 25 watts is a strain, especially when you hit a 0, which is a long dash. You could recognize our signal because the audio would go, oh, when you hit a dash. Radio's well, the most important thing we had. Our only means of communicating with base. So they had to be set up and depended upon the skip from the ionosphere in order to make contact. And sometimes you played for hours with the antenna trying to get the right angle to make communication. Fortunately, after the first couple of days, we no longer sent our supply messages in code. We sent them in a clear because it didn't matter. But most of the stuff had to be encoded and transmitted that way. So, like everything else, everybody had more than one job. So the communication guys, when you set up bivouac for the night, that's when you set up the radio and you worked another couple of hours without any trouble. I think we did an amazing job under the circumstances.
All right, I'm taking good notes because I just So we're in the right direction. All right, yes, sir. Number 5?
23.
23. All right, is Cadet Marsteller in here? All right, here we go. What is a memory from your experience that will stay with you your whole life?
When we got to Merrill, we had some training under Stillwell, and we had to do a night march with mules, all our equipment, going through the jungles at night on trails. What happens is, with me, we get out there for a way, then I look in front of me, and the column in front of me that just disappeared. So I had my old talkie-walkie with me, and my call sign was Black Label. And I told the unit in front of me had disappeared that night. And what happened was they sent a unit back and rescued me. And I learned from that is, if you're in the night march, you've got to keep contact. And make sure you have communication with you if you miss the contact. Because there's a lot of trails in the jungles, and it's very dark, really dark. And you don't want to make a lot of noise, especially mules. They fall off the trail at night with all the equipment, and you gotta go down in the ravines and pick that equipment up and join up with the call.
All right, nobody better ask for mules at our next training exercise, because you just heard they're hard to deal with. So great advice. You got to stay in contact. You got to stay in touch with the element that's in front of you, even when it's dark. So you got to keep going forward. All right, any other questions from the Marauders that you see? Number 19. All right. Jonathan. Polion. Cadet Polion. I was going to make it sound really French. Cadet Polion. All right, here's his question. What was your training to become a Marauder like, and how intense was it?
Well, my training to become a Marauder actually started in another part of the world. My first combat to ever into was the 25th in Guadalcanal. From that point, we went on to another short island called Lower Bilbao, and another one, the Solomon Islands. Now, I'd have to say, my training to get ready for the Marauders was jungle fighting in the South Pacific, which I don't know how you can get any better training than in the actual contact. And as long as the soldier was in combat, the better he was trained to help the other two. That's where I'm taking over as a volunteer for my Marauders. I was considered one of the combat veterans. So my main job from the training was to see that the younger ones, and when I'm saying younger now, I was 23. To see that those guys could make it through, and all did, and I have to say they did. They were very good. Because I was the only combat veteran in my platoon. Training was active combat. And it, of course, the training for the young boys who had not been in combat before was to lead combat and take it as they came to it. and we did. Our first encounter with the Japanese in Burma, it worked out very well, They went outpost, the Japanese eliminated them completely. It, so it did very well.
That's right. So for those that may not know, there were two separate groups, in a sense, of volunteers who came together to form the Marauders. So the first group they had no combat experience, and they linked up with a second group that did have combat experience. Just like Mr. Kinney said, they spread out those that had combat experience throughout the rest of the unit to try and help them prepare for what they were going to face. So that is an excellent description. Are there any other questions that you might see that you'd like to address? Number 5. All right, Cadet Kinsey. Where are you at? You guys stand up. All right, this is from Cadet Kinsey right here. What do you think of how the Rangers have developed into today's fighting force? Mr. Passanisi.
What do I think of how the Rangers have developed in today's fighting force? You guys mean the impossible obstacle course? If half the Marauders were to take that course, they would fail. Obviously, that means you're better than the Marauders ever were. So think of it. You are the best fighting force in the world. No one comes close to that. And the obstacle course proves it without a question. I wish I was able to make that course, but I couldn't.
Hi, I'm Bob Veracani. My father was Dominic Veracani. He was in the khaki combat team, BAR man. And a ranger at one of the reunions was shaking his hand and saying, "Sir, just giving him a lot of respect." My dad said, "Are you kidding? I couldn't do what you guys do. Airplanes and helicopters." He said, "I was on the ground and I was warm. That was enough for me." So my father gave a tip of his hat to you guys that he admitted he couldn't do what you guys do today.
How about that? Now, Mr. Bob, I'm gonna hold all these, since you said that, all these cadets have no excuse not to pass the obstacle course. So you guys heard that. You guys heard that. All right, what was the number?
Number 24.
Number 24? All right. Paul, where you at? What or where was the hardest part of your career?
My training early when I went to Trinidad, I got into a infantry company, and each morning we'd fall out at 8 o'clock to do PT. At that time, I was a corporal, and I was selected to give the company PT. I knew the cycles of some of them, and I gave them the PT. But then afterwards, when I was with a smaller group, they asked me why I gave them so many repetitions. They didn't like to keep the same exercise and do so many repetitions with that exercise. They wanted to try another one.
I think we might have to have you come and give PT to our cadets sometime. We'll have a special platform. That's no problem. All right. I think was there another one that somebody wanted to answer? Oh, I saw another. Mr. Kenny, I think you mentioned the mules. Mr. Gabe, is there anything you would tell the cadets about the mules?
Can you tell about the mules?
Yeah.
Here. Tell them about the mules, Bob.
The mules was a grand part of it. They carried our loads, they carried our loads all. Well, mules, you know, they volunteered also. They did well. The mule skinners were the ones, soldiers that were taking care of the mules, were called mule skinners. They learned to become part of that animal. An animal was part of them. They would, before the nation of it was over, the mules and the handler was like a shoulder and its head. And they were our machine. As far as going, when we had to go across the human mountain, that was to the point that we had to dig steps in the mountain to get the mules up. They had to push the mules up. They still made it with a load on it. Without the mules, we would never been able to carry the equipment that they carried. So they had a heavy mortar that had, that was probably the largest machine they had to carry. But they did carry ammunition. I think each mule could carry 10 boxes of ammunition, which was the most important part of it, get that ammunition along with and the mules, yes, that was a great part of it. And they had to be trained in the forest again. Those mule skinners had to train that mule after they was assigned to it. A very important part of our mission.
All right, we're quickly running out of time, but I just want to see if there's any other of the questions that you see you may like to answer.
What number is it?
Pick number 10.
Number 10. Cadet Compton. All right. What was the most important trait that you saw in your leaders during World War II?
What was the most important trait you saw in your leadership during World War II? Most important thing between men and their leaders is respect. You must know your men, and you must know how capable they are. And in most cases, you let them know what needs to be done, and you let them go ahead and do it. You don't micromanage. There's many times that sergeant may know more about the situation than you do. Listen to them. It's important that you get all the information you can. We were very lucky. We had an unbelievable crew of officers. You wouldn't trade any of them at any time. For some reason or other, everything worked out so in harmony between the men and their officers. And the actual officer made you want to do your job, not fight him back, but want to prove to him that you did the job right. I think that's the most important thing you could learn.
Any other questions? I think that's a superb ending to this breakfast as well as the weekend in a room full of future leaders to hear from a Marauder. Know your men. Trust your men. Earn their respect. And you won't have to tell them what to do because they'll follow you wherever you go. Please join me in a round of applause for our guests of honor this morning. If our Marauders will just stay put for just a moment, I'll allow the cadets and the teams to leave first and just come by if they'd like to, or go ahead and exit. That way you'll be able to leave after they leave. Thank you everyone for joining us.